Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Intel's just patched a remote execution vulnerability that's been lurking in its chips for the past 9 years. We've got the details, plus some handy tips on how to decide if you're affected. Then Dan does a deep dive into friend of the show Tarsnap and their awesome backup services. We talk about how he uses it, why, and discuss when does it make sense to use a third-party service versus rolling your own. Plus, we've got a few tips on some lightweight backup software that might just be a better fit than Bacula or some of the other things we've talked about. Then we've got your feedback, a rockin' roundup, and so much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Welcome to this week's episode of TechSNAP, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly systems, network, and administration podcast. This episode was streamed live on May 2nd, 2017, and is brought to you by our three excellent sponsors, DigitalOcean, Ting, and iXsystems. My name is Wes, and joining me this week is our friend Dan. Yeah, that's right, he's the guy with the rack. He's got the Tarsnap. It's everything we need in an awesome TechSNAP hope. Welcome to the show, Dan.
There's the rack.
Ooh.
There's the
It's everything.
Tetris cubes. Yes,
That's why we like you. No, actually, it's also your amazing ability to explain complicated topics to our fair viewers.
I try. I've always liked teaching.
Isn't it? There's a lot of joy and gratification in teaching. I like that too.
I was a TA. Is that a term used here?
Yeah.
A teacher's assistant at university, and I like that a lot. And I've just sort of basically continued with that ever since.
Oh, that's great. Well, I sure appreciate your hard work doing it here on the TechSNAP program. Is there anything new with you this week you'd like to chat about?
No, I don't think any new toys arrived. I know that I was playing around with some of these things. People should recognize those. Those are optics. Basically, on this end, a fiber optic cable plugs in, and then that end you plug it into the switch or the NIC. I need to get some new ones of these because the ones I got for the cards I just placed in do not work very well at all. They're Mellanox
Okay.
Connect X2s, and while they do have support in FreeBSD 11, you have to load a kernel module.
I see.
And I don't think it's compiled by default, so you have to
get it compiled. Yeah, right.
Load it, and then it works. But I haven't pursued that because I'm busy with other stuff. Alan Jude had told me that he uses those, and if he can do it for what he does, I can use it here.
It's funny, that just makes me think about ZFS on Linux or other things. Like for a lot of people, that just having that module breakage or potential breakage, that's enough to, this isn't the one for me. I'll choose something else. So it'll be interesting to see, how you operationalize that.
Well, generally, if you just compile it on one box, and then you can just copy it to the ones you need it, and then anytime you upgrade, it might break. But then you can just compile it again and have it ready.
Right.
But I wonder if the old module would work in the next version, but it's a new kernel. So maybe, I don't know. That's a good question.
I'm not sure if you ever done, I haven't. Is it easy to run your own personal FreeBSD package repo or similar?
Yeah. I've been running one at home for, I guess, years now. Basically, what you do is you get a list of the ports you need, and you can actually query that on the box. I forget what it actually is, package query something, and it gives you a list of all the ports, all the installed packages which were not installed by something else.
Oh, that's really handy, yeah.
So that's just the top level, and if you build those, you'll wind up with everything that's already installed on the box.
Okay.
So I take that list and I feed that into Poudriere, and I put the options that you need to compile with in another file. You can store that in a flat file, because there's a default set of options that everything is compiled with by default.
Right.
But you can change those on a port by port basis. And so, yeah, I build everything. I build for the 11 tree, the 10.3 tree, because I've got 10.3 and 11 boxes.
See, that sounds actually really nice.
And every night, there's a cron job that does an SVN up of the ports tree. So any changes that have occurred in the past 24 hours get downloaded. And then a script runs, which will rebuild anything that is changed overnight.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
And so it should be ready the next morning. So if a vuln is announced overnight and patched at the same time before I start that process, I can just upgrade in the morning.
Taken care of.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yes. Huh. It's beautiful.
Well, speaking of vulnerabilities, I guess that brings us right into our first story of the day. And you may have heard about it already. It's kind of late-breaking news, but red alert. Intel has patched a remote execution hold that's been hidden in business and server chips since 2008. Yikes.
Yeah. I didn't know what to do with this when this first came out because, oh my God, I have to read up on so much. But I've never used this feature. And people think of remote management and they think of IPMI, or they think maybe of a serial port, or maybe I know that just yesterday, Mark Felder had posted a blog post, put up a blog post about converting your Dell iDRAC from using Java to using SSH.
Oh, I think I saw that. That sounds interesting.
It's very nice because you don't need Java. All you need is an SSH connection. So figuratively, well, I guess you could do it from your phone. But all the commands to do everything you need in order to, say, mount a remote ISO or anything for mounting, for installation, you can do that through SSH because everything is menu driven. Like you go into a certain module and you say, okay, let's mount this. Okay.
Like those old school telnet menus that you'd see on firewalls or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just like that.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. Rather than all the Java, the proprietary Java stuff is just...
I want that to go away.
I do too.
Please. It's just horrible.
It's horrible.
And I remember setting up a server at work using this very tool that Mark configured. And that was mostly because we couldn't get the Java to work properly. It needed a certain version or it kept falling over. It just was not reliable. But SSH is just there, and you just set SSH in there. It can be on an out-of-band network. So you've got your separate network management. You just SSH into it, and you do your work there. But yeah, what we're talking about here in Intel is very different to that. We're talking about IPMI and Java consoles, but this is altogether different. I had to go and read up on it. The main thing I took away from it is its hardware-based management, and it does not depend upon the presence of an OS or locally installed management agent. So there's all these third-party tools that you can get to do this. But Intel said, they saw this ages ago that this really should be done this way. So yeah, I was also reading, it was the MJG59 post that you put in the channel earlier.
Ah, yes, Matthew Garrett's blog. Yeah, that's a useful one.
Yeah, he mentioned how to figure out if you're affected, and I've never used this, so I know I'm not affected. But the lovely thing about this stuff is that the OS never even sees this traffic. So the hardware captures this traffic, and the OS is totally unaware it's there. It comes in on a special port. So it's completely OS independent. It doesn't matter what you're running on the box. And like we said, you don't need an OS on the box for this to work. So it's an incredibly useful tool, and I'm sure it's widely deployed in big groups. But, So, anyway, the bug is in Intel's Active Management Technology, AMT, Standard Manageability, ISM, and Small Business Technology, SBT, firmware versions 6 to 11.0. And according to Chipzilla, the security hole allows an unprivileged attacker to gain control of the manageability features provided by these products. So basically, if you can get to it through this, you own that machine. You can wipe that whole machine. You can install another OS on it. I don't know how easy it would be to gain control of what's in the box, like steal the contents of the box. But I don't see why not. If you can overwrite the disk from here and install the OS, you certainly should be able to read what's on it. And how is you can't even see this. The OS won't detect this as far as I know.
I mean, so it's a part of the management engine, which is a small microprocessor that's separate, and then this is a component of that. So yeah, right. Like you send it in there, and it just takes that traffic right from the NIC. Never gets delivered to the main CPU at all.
Some part of it is in the CPU, and some part of it is like on a separate chip on the motherboard. So does that mean that it's only Intel motherboards, or some motherboards come with this management chip already installed?
Yes, I believe so. I think you get that, as part of like licensing the processor and the architecture from Intel and building the motherboard for them. I mean, it may depend, and I think all the new ones they have the ME on them. Obviously, as seen from this article, not all of them have this technology enabled, or I'm not sure if they ship different firmware versions or not. But I know like some of the ME also contains some like TPM implementations and some of their other management or security features.
Someone in the channel just mentioned it sounds like something a spy agency could use.
It certainly does.
And yeah, Architect, we know it's part of the Intel CPU, but it's also, there are features also provided by a separate chip. And this came out so recently that I haven't had a full chance to read all the way through it, but figured it was such big news and affects so many people. Like, it affects every Intel platform with AMT, ISM, and SBT, from Nehalem, is that how they say that chipset name? Nehalem in 2008 to Kaby Lake in 2017. So that's a period of 9 years. All the chips produced over the past 9 years have a remotely exploitable security hole.
Yikes.
So if you've got this, what do you do? Well, if it's not installed, if you're not using it, it doesn't turn on automatically. So unless you've turned it on, you should be safe. But we're supplying an article. We're supplying a link to an article which shows you what to do. There are instructions to disable or uninstall LSM. Make sure that AMT is disabled. And if it's your own computer, you should have nothing else to worry about. But if you're a Windows admin with untrusted users, you also want to disable or uninstall LSM. It doesn't mean that every Intel system can be taken over by hackers, because most Intel systems, this is key, most Intel systems do not ship with this. So it's mostly I'm going to guess it's mostly higher end chips. Most consumer grade systems will not have this in it. I'm positive.
Yeah, right.
Now,
yeah, exactly. It's like it shouldn't, it'll be more of a thing to be aware of for bigger organizations that have enabled this feature, that are using it, and that hopefully then that will mean that they have security staff or properly trained administrators who can get the fixes for this, know that they are using it, and will know that they need to patch.
Yeah, it is new system firmware, so yeah, it's a big deal.
It's a serious update, right?
And I think you're gonna have to use the system to upgrade the system.
Right.
So,
that's a problem of trust.
This is big. I wonder if it. I mean, they've come out and told us they're going to release a patch. I don't think they have already, have they? No, I don't think so. Or have they?
I think that it may be released now. I'm not 100% sure. If not, it will be released soon. Let's see here.
I have not found any details anywhere about an actual fix. But so if you're using this, chances are already that you're using it, and you're probably having heart palpitations now.
Yeah, here the register says to get Intel's patch to close the hole, you'll have to pester your machine's manufacturer for a firmware update. So that's no good. That's not what you want.
It's not Intel specific. It's hardware manufacturer specific. That's even worse.
Yeah, that is even worse. Boy.
So AMT requires a few things: a supported CPU, a supported chipset, supported network hardware, and the ME firmware to contain the AMT firmware. So merely having a vPro CPU and chipset isn't sufficient. Your system vendor also needs to have licensed AMT code and under Linux if LSPCI doesn't show a communication controller with MEI or HECI in the description. AMT isn't running in your safe. If it does show an MEI controller, that still doesn't mean you're vulnerable. AMT may still not be provisioned. If you reboot, you should see a brief firmware splash mentioning the ME. Hitting Control P at this point should get you into a menu over which you can disable AMT. Now, wouldn't it be horrible if this was available over Wi-Fi?
Oh, man. Now you're just scaring me, Dan.
It is available over Wi-Fi.
Of course. Well, I mean, you need to be able to remotely manage your laptops, right?
Yeah, but AMT will only connect itself to networks it's been explicitly told about.
Okay, see, that's nice. That's good. That's reasonable.
Yep. Now, where things get more confusing is that once the OS is running, responsibility for Wi-Fi is switched from the ME to the OS, and it forwards packets to AMT.
Oh.
So it's not as transparent as... It doesn't sound as
So you can join a wireless network, and then if people then would be able to try to authenticate or use this vulnerability even perhaps against your AMT now that you are on that network and packets can reach that interface. Well,
I'm not sure, because it says here, quote, I haven't been able to find good documentation on whether having AMT enabled for Wi-Fi networks results in the OS forwarding packets to AMT on all Wi-Fi networks or only ones that are explicitly configured. And basically, we have zero information about the vuln other than it allows unauthenticated access to AMT. That's the only thing we know. And we don't even know if it affects all SMT setups or setups that are in small business mode or setups are in enterprise mode. If it's just enterprise mode, the individual end users will have basically zero chance of it affecting them, because enterprise mode involves a bunch of effort to configure, and nobody's going to do that for their home set. Well, does he know us? Some of us might have. I haven't done it here.
No, I haven't done it either. I wonder, maybe, there may be licensing and other things involved as well to be able to.
There is. Your system vendor also needs to have licensed the AMT code, but I wonder if the end user needs a license as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. Or if you'd have the right motherboard and chipset, then will it just work?
So, nobody needs to panic. Well, most people do not need to panic.
What if I'm already panicking, Dan? How do I calm down?
In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Is that the right way? In through the mouth? Just
something like that.
Just breathe gently. But most Intel systems don't ship with AMT, and most Intel systems with AMT don't have it turned on. Right. So I think this is a small percentage of all the Intel boxes out there. I'm sure. I sure hope so.
I know some work we've talked about a little bit on the Linux Unplugged program is the folks over at LibreBoot and some people kind of associated with that project or interested in that project. They've done some work on, and I know the company Purism, they've done some work to get processors where they have more control over this or can turn a fuse off when they've got it ordered from Intel. And then there's also this project here called ME Cleaner, which is a tool that will attempt to remove any unnecessary partitions from the Intel ME firmware, trying to get it to a point where it's what the minimum I think right now it's the minimum that's required to be able to boot successfully and operate the system. Because if you completely disable it or wipe it, it'll run for 30 minutes and then the system just hard shuts off. So there's some projects underway to try to get this so that it's running the minimum amount of code that you don't get to see on your system in this privileged mode.
So it just shuts itself off after 30 minutes. That sounds like a timer.
Yeah, it does. I've not played with trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. So to let you boot, the system works. So clearly it's mostly working. So there may be an artificial limitation that they've imposed that if you do try to, use their CPUs without the management engine, then hey, no go. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting work, and it just kind of underscores, some of the reasons people are interested in like RISC-V or other open architectures that we can verify. There's so much going on, even in like very nice, Intel CPUs, but there's like a lot of things that can go on. Here we have this separate, coprocessor that has privileges that could run outside of our otherwise ring zero control, and it just kind of underscores, especially in today's age of, if it's there to be exploited, people are going to try to find it. So having something like this that hides behind your OS, I can see why it makes people uncomfortable.
Do you know? Itanium?
Yeah.
Is that from the 80s or something? Itaniums
are 90s and 2000s. I know. Let's see.
I recall something about that. Was that a RISC-based platform? I remember hearing great stuff about this hardware platform that was coming out, and I think that may have been my first exposure to RISC-based architecture. And I said, "Oh, this makes so much sense."
Let's see here. It's a 64-bit Intel microprocessor, Intel Itanium. IA64 is what it was called. I'm not sure about its origins.
Now, I do like RISC-based chips. I do like the fact that they're very simple, and I think it makes sense just to keep things very simple, easy to follow, and then it's easy to make bigger instructions out of smaller instructions. And it's also simpler to make those chips, isn't it?
I would imagine so, yeah. I'm obviously not.
I'm not a chip maker either.
Not at all. So it'd be interesting to hear more about that. So if anyone in the audience, if you're an expert in that kind of thing, please do provide us feedback or good resources to learn about that kind of thing. But I do think it underscores, obviously more eyes on things won't fix it. But when you do have these very privileged secret code bases that no one can audit but the manufacturer, it can cause some problems.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see how this gets fixed, and if we
I imagine that once those firmware patches come out, that people will be doing binary diffs and trying to dissect what changed, and so hopefully we'll have some follow up on this. I would love to see that.
Yeah, I sure hope this doesn't affect anyone directly.
Yeah, me too, definitely. It's interesting. I did see some reporting like that. I guess people had suspicions of this for quite some time. Or claimed that they had knowledge of this or foreknowledge. So it's interesting that it's being released. It'll be good to see the fallout and hopefully minimum fault and things get patched relatively quickly.
Well, it was discovered and reported in March.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, good luck, folks. This is unfortunate.
Yes, it is. If your organization or your operations run into it, you should also give us feedback about that. I think it'd be very interesting to hear about people who've had to do mitigations firsthand, how they rolled that out, that sort of thing. That sounds like great stuff for the TechSNAP program.
Yep. Please let us know. I'd love to hear stories about this.
Anything else you'd like to add on this one?
Nope. Thank you.
Okay, well, with that, let's turn it to our first sponsor this evening. That's our friends over at DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean, the fine purveyor of excellent VPSs. So if you're worried now, you're like, these, running my own server, how many things am I going to have to patch? I don't want to deal with firmware. DigitalOcean is the place to go. There, in under 55 seconds, you can get a brand new, shiny distribution of your choice VPS spun up. Super fast. Great API. You can use our promo code SNAPOcean. Yeah, that's right. SNAPOcean, one word, all lowercase. That will get you started with a $10 credit onto your account. Then wait till I tell you prices. Yeah, they start at just $5 a month. Go on over to DigitalOcean, DigitalOcean.com. Go on over their pricing page. There you'll find a very easy to use, awesome little thing. It lays out all the options that you have. They've got both monthly and hourly prices. Those hourly prices, my friends, super reasonable. And look at some of the power you can get for such incredible rates, right? So, hey, 50 cents an hour, you get 32 gigs of memory, 12-core processor, 320 gigs of SSD disk, and a whopping 7 terabytes of transfer. And that's not like bargain basement transfer. That's not like, oh yeah, we had this little rinky-dink ISP come over, yeah, it's over radio and Wi-Fi and latency is not great. No, DigitalOcean has 40 gigabit E right to their KVM hypervisors, premium stuff. Go check out their blogs or their Instagram or any of their social media. You'll see their beautiful, top-notch, state-of-the-art data centers. They really take a lot of pride in what they're doing. And that also shows through their work with the community, right? They understand that DigitalOcean is a great place to run open source software, to build your next blog or website or startup. And they help this out by having an awesome community of people who use Linux, who use FreeBSD. They've got great FreeBSD support. And because they use KVM, you can run, if you do a little bit of work, you can run pretty much anything that you want. To supplement that, they have an awesome selection of community guides, first-rate documentation. I hire real editors to take what the community has submitted and turn it into a cohesive, coherent, awesome place to go learn. So you're getting to the point where half the time you'll Google something and the first or the best link is going to be a DigitalOcean guide. That just shows that DigitalOcean really understands what people want. They've got a great API, an awesome website, a ton of community apps, official apps. It's really all there. So just use our promo code SNAPOcean. That'll get you started. And then write some feedback. Tell us here at the TechSNAP program what you thought, how you liked it, and all the cool projects that you got to do on DigitalOcean. Thanks to our friends at DO for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. Alrighty then, on to our next story of the evening. What do you have for us, Mr. Dan?
Well, I'd like to talk about Tarsnap. Now, most of you will have heard about Tarsnap. If you've listened to BSC Now, you know they're a sponsor there. I know the author of Tarsnap, Colin. He's been involved in the BSD community for a long time. He's a pretty clever guy, and he seems to know his stuff when it comes to security. I remember he gave a talk at BSD Can, I think it might have been 2005, 2006, about an Intel security item, and I was worried that this was the same thing, but no, I went back and checked. It was something totally separate. It was not related to this at all. So, and I use Tarsnap. Most of you know that I also use Bacula. And why do I use both? Because it's easy and I can. You rarely regret making additional backups.
Yeah, I think that's a good principle right there.
Rarely. The more backups you have, like if everything in this apartment was destroyed and my secondary backups over there were destroyed and all my servers everywhere were destroyed, I would still be able to get my backups back because I have my backup keys stored in the cloud somewhere, in a separate thing, not related to any of this stuff. So all my important stuff, like my code repos, possibly some SSH keys, all of that stuff is backed up in Tarsnap. And I'm really confident that nobody can read it unless they steal one of my keys. But if they can steal one of my keys, which is read-only by root, then they're root, and they can read anything on the box I'm on.
Right, anyway, you're screwed anyway.
I'm rooted. So basically, there are other third-party backup solutions where they will also encrypt your backup with their key, so that should you happen to lose your key, you can still get their backups back. But that also means that someone else could get your backups as well. And Tarsnap is having none of that. If you lose your key, you can't get your backups back from Tarsnap. But that's both a good thing and a bad thing, because it means nobody else is getting your backups either.
Right. It means you can actually be sure, right? You're not in one of these like compromised positions where well, I'd like to back this up, but could it be used to incriminate me in the future? Or could it be possibly embarrassing if it fell into the wrong hands? You can, I mean, if you trust the cryptography and you trust the code, which you have access to, then, that's a different level of trust than having a shared key.
You have access to the client-side code.
Right.
Client-side code.
Yes, thank you. That's a good correction.
Now, what was I going to say? Have you ever heard people talk about full disk encryption, Gelly, something like that.
Yeah,
you may
totally.
not use Gelly.
I've only played with it a little bit myself. I've used more familiar with Lux on the Linux side, but I've set it up before.
Well, I'm not mentioning it because of any particular encryption model or method. I'm mentioning it. The only thing I've used encryption for is swap partitions, but I've stopped doing that because it's difficult to get a core dump.
I see.
In a swap partition, so I stopped using encrypted swaps. The best argument for full disk encryption is RMAs.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's a really good point.
And someone else pointed that out to me. I said, "Oh, yeah," but then someone else said, "I never RMA. I just buy a new disk."
That's fair. But just kind of ubiquitous encryption is nice for that. I'm just thinking right now about like my phone that I got a replacement Pixel, and I'm just about to send off the old one. I can't boot it, so I can't. Without damaging it, I don't know how to wipe the drive inside, but it's already encrypted. So there we go.
Nobody can read anything.
Nobody can
unless
read it
they
anyway.
have your passphrase.
Yeah, which is great, and that's good. That's really nice.
That's good. That is very good.
And thankfully, I think everything on there was backed up, right? So it's like it's a paired point. You need your encryption. You also need the backups because they can't help me recover that data. They could give me a full disk image, I guess, but.
And Tarsnap keys are not passphrases. They're big. They're big keys. They're like
with
SSL
real randomness
size.
in there.
Yeah. Yes. Now, were you talking about the keys? Yeah, I like the fact that when I take my phone in, I have to completely. They want me to do. They want me to. They don't do it themselves. They want me to do the full wipe before I give it into them.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
For an exchange or something. Say like it's on a warranty job or something. They want me to do the full factory wipe before they'll take it. That's fair enough.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about is I found this blog post this afternoon when I went looking to see if I'd written anything about Tarsnap before. I went looking for an old blog post of mine, and I'd written this back in 2015. And so basically, I know that I've been using Tarsnap for at least 2 years this month, at least 2 years. But it says here that I last used it in July 2010 because I found the old Tarsnap registration confirmation, but I didn't pursue it because I thought I had too much data to back up. Because back then, I was storing, like I had about 10 terabytes of backup on disk. But I went and did this and did a big backup. And it turns out that I'm not actually storing 10 gigabytes of disk. I looked at the records that have been around recently, and Tarsnap uses deduplication, and it does that on the client. So basically, it reads something from disk and says, it reads it from disk, it encrypts it, and it says, does that match any of the blocks that are already stored away there? And if it does, it doesn't send it. It just discards it and sends a token off and says, this is already stored.
To me, that's a huge win. Like it really shows the sophistication. That's where I see a lot of the power and the uniqueness of Tarsnap. Like it's not easy to be able to do that, to get the encryption right, to keep the security. And that's one of the things like impresses me a lot about Colin is he's done a lot of this research and proof of work and built something that works.
Yep. And for a very brief time, I worked for a backup company based in Florida.
Oh, interesting.
They do a very similar approach. But they were doing it, I think, before Colin started Tarsnap because I worked for them in about 2007. And it was very interesting what they were doing. But I did the math. I've been backing up every day for 2 years. And the total amount of disk space I'm using for all of those backups is about 85 gig. I've never deleted any of my backups.
That's awesome.
Not once.
Wow.
I also did the math somewhere. I have it over here. It costs me about 75 cents a day.
That seems so totally worth it.
I'm storing about 87 gig in total, and I'm adding about 1.6 gig a month.
Okay, yeah.
So that's how much I'm writing per month, is about 1.6 gig. That's not how much it's growing by, because a lot of that is duplicate.
Right. But it's that really nice model of where you don't have to worry about that, right? You don't have to try to make sure that you're not backing up needless stuff. Like, it's just taken care of.
Yep. What is interesting about it is, where was it? When you do the backup, it's just like using tar. If you've used tar in this, it's very similar to tar, and there's not much involved in doing backup. Basically, you run tar, and the output from the job, even the output from the tar command is very similar to what you get when you. Sorry, the output from the Tarsnap command is very similar to what you do if you're going to do a tar -cv. Is very similar to that. Now, there's something that you said. What were you just talking about? You said something about just being able to do the backups and they just run. Oh, how do you pay for it? You pay for it in advance. Basically, you sign up, you put some money in your account, and then you can start backing up. And if you run out of money, Tarsnap will send you an email about 7 days before you're going to run out of funds. And you don't really have to worry, because at the end of that 7 days, your backups don't disappear. You just can't do new backups. And then after some period of time, if you're still not putting any money in, then your backups go away. But they don't get automatically deleted. So you do have some leeway. I think there's actually a policy on the website, which I have not read recently, but he's not going to delete your data. He's very hesitant to delete old repos.
Right. Deleting your users' data is not like a great business plan usually.
No.
Especially if you have a hope that they'll, they probably just forgot to pay.
He doesn't do that.
But it is a nice model of, pay for what you use, which, there's a lot of our sponsors are like that as well. So it's like, hey, you need more, you pay for more. You're not needing enough. You don't have to sign up for a giant bucket that you then will never use.
One example, just my repo, my source code repo is 15 gig. So just that is, there's a lot of stuff in there, which is...
I bet so.
There's some binaries in there.
Oh, yeah.
Like audio tapes and stuff like that are related to conferences. So 15 gig. I've been backing that up daily for 2 years.
Wow.
And so all the duplicated stuff, I know what I wanted to say. If you're dumping a big text file, anything that you're backing up to disk, say from a database, and you're doing a database dump, do not compress the results. Let Tarsnap do the deduplication. Colin and I did a little test here where I dumped the FreshPorts database and would back it up both compressed and uncompressed. And the uncompressed version wound up sending less data, because what it does is when you dump the database, basically all the data winds up in the same place anyway. And stuff is often just appended to the end of the table. And so Tarsnap sees that and says, oh, this hasn't been stored before. I'll send that back. But if it's compressed, it's random data, and it can't really tell that this has already been sent. So backup raw, uncompressed files, you'll wind up having less cost. And I did the math. If I wanted to restore all 80, let's say 90 gig, it would cost me about 90 divided by 4. It's 25 cents a gigabyte. So let's say it would cost me $4. $4? 25 cents, $1. 100 divided by 4, $25. It cost me $25 to restore all 90 gig, less than 24. So it's reasonable in price. it's basically transparent because you just set a cron job and let it run. So right now what I want to do is I want to run briefly through how I did this. So first thing, sign up for a Tarsnap account. Get a good password, save that password away in some nice password manager. Then you have to load up your Tarsnap account. You can do that with a credit card, Bitcoin, or PayPal. Maybe you took PayPal away because I think today I only read about Bitcoin and Stripe, or you can fund it. So after this, create a Tarsnap key. Now there's a Tarsnap key dash keygen, and then you give it a key file name. I actually recommend doing this not on the server that you're backing up. Do this on a central place that you trust. Do this for all of your servers that you're doing this for, because there's nothing worse than forgetting to back up that key. If you start off with all your keys in a central place, secure that place, you're fine. A friend of mine lost his entire server. It was backed up in Tarsnap, but he did not have a backup of his Tarsnap key. It was nowhere to be found. He went through all the hard drives. He tried to find it from there. He could not locate the key.
You're killing me,
disk.
Dan. Oh my, wow. That's horrible.
Everything gone.
That is a dark day.
So I went and I looked. I have my Tarsnap keys backed up in my password manager. I have not tested them.
Yeah,
I have not tested them, but I should.
Yeah, that's some homework from today's show, Dan. Test your Tarsnap keys.
Yes. So when you do the keygen, you will be prompted for your Tarsnap password. And that's just to make sure that you're a legit person putting stuff in your account. So save your key. I've already said that. So the first Tarsnap backup, basically you do Tarsnap -C, which is similar to the tar command, -C for create a tarball, -F. -F is the file that you want to put it into in tar. In Tarsnap, it's the name of the backup that you're creating. And I'll always do something of hostname.date and back it up that way. And then you give the path of what you want to back up. And then it whips through it, removing leading / from member names. That's a familiar thing. So I let that run overnight in a TMUX session. And I came back the next day, and I had a list here of total size, compressed size. And there wasn't much difference because these were all repos. But actually, it did compress quite a bit. That 16 gig of data compressed down to 7.6 gig of data, more than 50%. So it was going to cost me $4 a month to store this, but it's only $2 a month because of the compression. That is nice. So he's compressing the data, and he's also duplicating it. And I know for a fact that there is overlap between the BSDCan and the PGCon website repos, because if you go to those websites, the websites look identical, apart from having slight differences. But I honestly did an SVN copy to get the PGCon website started. So yeah, there's duplicate there. So then I did another backup. And this time what I wanted to back up was my Bacula configuration. And again, I created another key because this is a different host, and it's going to be doing a different backup. And that backup ran almost immediately because it was only 470K, and compressed it's only 24K. There's a lot of plain text in a Bacula configuration. So then I went and looked at the cost of the backup, not just of the storage. So just sending that data to the server cost me $1.90. And then the daily storage was 6 cents, and the bandwidth of copying stuff back and forth was like less than a penny. So far, if that's all I ever backed up, it would be about $22 a year, and that's not much at all. $22 for storing 17 gig of data.
Yeah, pretty reasonable, really.
And the thing is, all of this stuff is stored on Amazon S3.
Right.
Is that the right term?
Yeah,
And
simple storage service.
These things, that's what the 3 is for. I always forget that. This stuff can survive the destruction of 2 data centers, not the destruction of 2 drives or 2 racks, but 2 data centers.
So you're in pretty good hands there.
It's kind of hard to destroy a data center.
Yes.
Godzilla has tried.
Barring some unknown, unforeseeable global catastrophe, which in that point, maybe your data is not the first thing you're thinking of.
No, no.
How are my friends and family? Am I alive?
Yep. If anything, I think it's about as safe as you can get for storing data.
So that kind of makes me think. So in the IRC room, Whodat is wondering, as we're talking here, why would we use this over other services, right? So like you could, if you wanted to, just back up your files to S3. There's like S3 sync, I know, like sync folders. So what makes you prefer Tarsnap, or why do you think it's useful in an admin or just general computer users tool belt?
Yep. Whodat, that's a good question. Well, you could just copy this stuff to S3 yourself if you wanted. You could just encrypt it and send it there, but Tarsnap's a lot easier. It's basically a nice little service.
Right, they've done the work for you.
They know a bit more about encryption than I do. I don't know. Really, you could roll your own and send this stuff out and do it all entirely yourself. But I couldn't be bothered doing that.
Right.
But perhaps you mean, why would you use this over another third party?
Yeah, like Carbonite, or putting it in your Dropbox or whatever.
Didn't want to name anyone. I'm not sure about Dropbox. I would still encrypt it before putting it on Dropbox. What Tarsnap does is it definitely encrypts it before it leaves your server. Nothing leaves your server unencrypted. And at that point, nobody can read it. The other thing is, it's an open source client. So a lot of people have read it and they know exactly what it's doing. And people have paid very close attention to it. There is a bug bounty on the client. And many people have tried to get big bug bounties. And I think they're all public, the ones that have been paid out. But you know what the code's doing. It's been proven to do exactly what it's doing and nothing more. So there's no secret key being applied to your file. If you're using this, I have no inside knowledge of what other services are doing. But if you're using a binary provided by a third party backing up your data, how do you know that it's encrypted? Perhaps the stream that it's sending out on the TLS is encrypted. But how do you know that the data that it's sending away is encrypted only with your data? How do you know that nobody else can unencrypt your data? With Tarsnap, you know that for a fact. Well, maybe you're going to rely on other people, but people have looked at the code, and it's definitely not providing a backdoor in there. Some third-party providers will say, oh, you lost your key. Oh, okay, well, here's your data for you. So they definitely have a way of getting at your data. And if they have a way, someone else can use that same way. And if you're serious about security and data, you don't allow backdoors, because that's what this other unnamed third party is doing when they give you your backup for which you've lost the key. Colin takes pride in saying, nope, you lost the key. Sorry, your backup's gone, which is a good thing. Because, for example, if you have fully encrypted drives, one of the best way to get rid of them is to delete the key portion of the drive. I forget which part it is, but there's a part of the drive that you can just wipe away, and those disks will be totally unreadable forever, even if you have the key. That can't be right. Just destroy the key. No one can read those encrypted drives. Yeah. But same with Tarsnap. If you don't want anyone to get your backups, destroy the key. No one ever will be able to get it.
Yeah. Destroy your key, stop paying, and there you go.
These are not easy things to guess either.
Right, yeah.
So Whodat, did that sort of explain why I'm so passionate about Tarsnap's solution?
And I think the key about this too is, like, I don't want to come off like we're trying to just shill for Tarsnap or anything. It's more just like, maybe third-party services aren't part of your backup regimen, but it can be an easy way to add another place, right? Like you may only have the budget or other things to invest in enough, like co-located or at your friend's house, like remote places where you can actually have offsite backups. So something like this, if you're in the market for a paid service to do backups, Tarsnap seems like the cream of the crop. It has something that Unix nerds, an interface that we can get along with. And like if you look at Colin's history, he's done a lot of nice contributions to FreeBSD. He has other projects. We talked about spiped last week, I think. So you can just tell like he's doing this for the right reasons. And it seems like a good, if I'm going to be spending money, it'd be nice to spend it on an operation that I would like to support.
Do you know anything about duplicity? Because JDE is mentioning duplicity. They use a key as well, but is their client open source? Do we know that that's the only key applied?
Open source project. Yeah, let's see. So I think it would be something you'd have to
used it.
Set up yourself.
I have not used it. I have no knowledge of it. Duplicity? No, not the movie. Thank you.
What is it? Duplicity backs directories by producing encrypted tar format volumes and uploading them to a remote or local file server. Because duplicity uses librsync, the incremental archives are space efficient and only record the parts of the files, blah, blah, blah. So,
in theory, it could go to all of these things. Yep.
Yeah. So you could totally roll your own with something like this.
Yep. I see how this would work. Well, JD, the thing I say is that I don't have to worry about Amazon S3 or any of the other things. I can just... I've got enough things to do. I don't want to do more things. So... this is the main reason that I let Tarsnap take care of it.
Right. And like in so many areas, it's always a trade-off. If you have the time, energy, desire, or think you can do things, you have a specific need, then yeah, totally. I think duplicity is a great thing. It might be something worth us looking into more in the future. I know I've played with it just a little bit. But yeah, sometimes you do want, it's like worth it enough that the small fee that you pay is like, okay, well, I just ship this cron job off, and I know that if my house burns down and my friend's house burns down the same day, then I still have my data.
You can Google for a lot of stuff comparing Tarsnap and duplicity, but be sure to read the comments on the posts. There's one in Tarsnap. I also think perhaps the difference in cost. I don't know. Don't let the cost of Tarsnap put you off, because the most important thing I back up, I think, is my Bacula configuration. And I figured out that to store that 47K, is that what it was? 24? Yeah, 24K. To store that 24K, I could store it for almost 100 years, and it would cost me less than 1 cent.
Right. There
I don't think I'd need it. I don't think I'd need it that long. But
right. And so that's useful. That's where it also comes back to, it's like, especially for those kind of things, right? Like, very valuable configs, keys, backups for your, for two-factor thing, anything like those, people might already be encrypting them and putting it on Google Drive or other places. Yep. This is just another way you can, make it done really easily. And here, rather than using a free service, you at least have a business relationship, so you can have some more guarantees that it's in their interest to keep your data secure and that he can't go pilfering.
Yeah. I don't have to worry about my S3 account.
That's also true.
Is the reason I say that.
Tarsnap is more fun than the AWS console or API. I'm willing to stand by that.
Yes. Have you used it?
Yes. I only have a little bit of stuff in Tarsnap right now where it's pretty much what you were talking about. Like, it's just like a couple keys and a few other things.
I don't think I've ever used the Amazon AWS. I know I've used Microsoft Azure.
Azure, yeah.
And I've used DigitalOcean. Mm-hmm. But since I originally created the droplet on DigitalOcean, I've never been back to their UI.
You don't need to. It works nicely like that.
It's been running a mail server for a friend of mine for, I guess, 1.5 years now. Just
churning away.
I've never seen an outage.
That's awesome.
Anything like that.
That's great.
It's a nice little solution. And I'm tempted to create another one because that server that crashed overnight,
Yeah.
It had one of my external Nagios monitoring systems on it. It's no big deal. I have it all in Ansible and backed up.
Right.
So,
how did you get a notification? Do you have like a Nagios monitoring and Nagios like a infinite loop thing?
I know. I noticed that I couldn't get to my external Nagios this morning.
There you go.
And there was a monitor. There is a monitor on it. That would be funny, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I do have Nagios monitoring Nagios, and one of the things I've wanted to do is to have a monitor on Nagios to tell me that Nagios is not running, because the website can still work.
Yeah, the website does still work, and you can miss that, and you're like, oh, but no checks are happening.
Why is this not working? What's going on? Why is everything out of date?
Yes, I have totally been there and been very frustrated.
Yeah, but yeah, I do have to add a monitor here at home for the remote one. I'll just set up another one. I just wanted one to get the external one running,
right?
Because I had a Nagios configuration that was this big, and I wanted to get to there, and I didn't want to buy a third-party VM, because I may just be able to work on this for an hour tonight and not get back to it for a month. So he's spun up a VM for me and let me use it.
Oh, beautiful. That's very nice.
It was very good. Anyway, we may have done this to death for the time being.
That's probably true.
Can you think of something else that you would like to ask? Does the audience have any more questions about Tarsnap?
Anyone over in the IRC room who has would like to ask something?
But I run these as cron jobs en route. The email comes back to me on a daily basis. I toss all those emails into one mailbox, which I never ever look at. In fact, today when I went to look at it to grab out a sample email, I couldn't remember what did I name it, and it's actually named Tarsnaps _Tarsnaps. So it sits at the top of the list, and there are 2,729 unread emails in that list, in that box. There's actually 3,200 in it, and let's go down to the bottom and see how long have I been running this? May 17th, 2015 is the oldest one in there. So, yeah, I like it. I use it for backing up a whole bunch of crap, stuff that I really don't want to do without.
Yeah, right. And so that made me think, like, when you're talking about your Nagios, I think it comes back to like that trade-off of what do you pay for versus what do you build yourself, especially if you're a competent admin or, Unix guy. And so like I've seen a lot of places that, they have their own monitoring stack that they've built, Nagios, other things. And at the edges, they'll often still like pay some third party just to run like basic HTTP gets against their stuff, just as that like, you can have a little bit of insurance that like some other person not connected to you is also doing this. And that seems like Tarsnap's the same thing. Like, and if you're not comfortable or you just want a little more security, hey, maybe it's for you.
Well, like I said, I could mess up with my own backups, but hopefully that's a place of last resort. What you said about third party, that is why I have an external monitoring thing.
Yeah, totally.
Because if my network at home goes down or this goes down, at least I still have something out there that's monitoring the websites that other people use.
Totally. You don't want one cable cut to cause you a complete blackout.
Yeah, because sometimes my websites go offline, and not necessarily because of something I did, but say someone else in the data center is getting DDoS and I'm victim of it.
Yeah, you're on their switch too or whatever.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So at least then I can find out what's going on when someone says, "Hey Dan, Freshports is kind of slow. What's going on?" I said, "Oh, someone's indexing all the searches."
That's pretty funny. All right. Well, anything else you'd like to add about Tarsnap?
No. If anyone's going to go and use it and try it, keep an eye on the statistics page on Tarsnap, and it gives you a very good list of how much data you're backing up, and you get a very quick idea of how much how long your money's going to last. But if you're only backing up a little bit, it should last a long time. $10 will go a long way if all you're backing up is Nagios configuration files.
And we'd love to hear about, if you are using Tarsnap, or, if you're like our chat room, JDE, similar, you're using something else, Duplicity, other services, other open source solutions. Like if you have solutions that work for you, we would love to hear about them, talk about them here on the show. So please write into us and let us know. I think that brings us, if you're concerned about storage, you're concerned about your data, you take backups seriously, you take your operations seriously enough to consider using Tarsnap, well, then don't just buy your server from any old vendor. Go on over to iXsystems. Come on. There you will find an awesome team of super talented sales engineers, emphasis on the engineer, who are ready to set you up with the hardware of your dreams. iXsystems is like no other hardware provider in the business. They partner with their suppliers, people like Intel, who sell awesome Intel processors, amazingly powerful, state-of-the-art. They've got these great relationships to make sure that you get the hardware that you need. And take a look on their website. You'll see some of their great sponsors: Sony, VMware, Adobe, Mozilla, Sega. These are the customers that they work with all the time, right? They make sure that people doing big data, big research, serious computations, serious analysis, that's their bread and butter. At the same time, they take that care, that attention to detail, that engineering knowledge, and they apply it to every machine that they build. They understand that, whatever you need, whether it's a new database server or it's just a backup machine for your house or your small office, it's important to you. It deserves to be custom, and it deserves to have love, care, and attention put into it. And that is where iXsystems separates themselves from the rest of the pack in their industry. They make sure that you get, the attention you need. You get guidance to help make sure that, all right, well, you don't know if you need this kind of SAS controller, or how are you going to get the tape drive to work? Will that be able to fit in this machine, or is the interface compatible? Does this motherboard with this chassis, are they compatible? Will I get I might have the right graphics coprocessor on this chip? All of those questions where you're like, I just don't know. This isn't what I do. I just need it to be a server so that I can start running the code that I write, or whatever. That's where iXsystems wants to be a partner to help your business succeed, just like you're helping their business succeed. And so you can grow into this, this real relationship. You're not talking to some faceless company or going to a website where you're just clicking through and you hope that the thing that you ordered is going to be the thing that comes and meets your needs. iXsystems is so much more than that. Plus, they have an awesome reputation in the open source community. They are responsible for the FreeNAS project. They also work on TrueOS, which is an awesome FreeBSD operating system derived distribution, however you want to call it. Go check that out. Plus, they've done a ton of work working with the OpenZFS community. So you can tell that they understand enterprise needs, they understand small customers' needs, and they understand open source needs. So if you go to iXsystems.com/TechSNAP, there you'll find their great guide to buying hardware for open source software. This is a great guide if you're looking to buy new hardware, or hey, if you have an ear in with the person responsible at your organization for procuring new hardware. iXsystems is an awesome vendor you can add to the list. I've had some problems with some we'll just not mention their names, but some of the bigger suppliers where, hey, they shipped you a lemon. Sure, they replaced the motherboard, they replaced this or that, but the machine just won't work. And it's like, it's pulling teeth to try to get them to do this. You will never have an experience like that with iXsystems. They just don't work that way. They're really in it to help you and to make sure you get the best server you can get. So go over to iXsystems.com/TechSNAP. That'll let you know that you appreciate them sponsoring us. Plus, hey, if you got a little downtime, head on over to their blog. They always have awesome new updates, right? So they're always working to get better support with VMware, with other big companies. Plus, they have some really nice articles if you're thinking about becoming a customer, like what I wish everyone knew about iXsystems white glove support. Go there, check out that article. You'll learn more about why we think iXsystems is just so awesome. So thank you to iX for sponsoring this here TechSNAP program. And that brings us to the feedback segment, the section of the show where we take time out and field questions, responses, criticisms, comments, really anything from our awesome fans. That's you guys. So let's see what we have in today's mailbag. First up, over on the TechSNAP subreddit, that's techsnap.reddit.com, looks like we've got something in from Sensor Smile. Something like that. And he's curious about Wes's take on this fork of Bacula called Baros. So I had heard of it. It had been brought up a couple times before. I did a little bit of research into, we've talked about Bacula. Dan's done some of his patented, awesome deep dives on it. So let's go check out Baros. So what is it? It's a 100% open source fork of the backup project Bacula. This fork has been in development since 2010 and has, so they say, a lot of new features. If you head on over to their FAQ, you'll see that they've answered some of the questions that, if you're listening to this, you may have things like, hey, why have you started a fork from Bacula? So it looks like some of the reasons that they've listed here is, they didn't like how the project leadership was going. They say that there was patches that were ignored, had some issues about the Bacula enterprise things. So it seems like they just had their own vision for how things should go, how things should be developed. One of the benefits of open source, right, is that we do have this opportunity to fork things, to make things our own if we need it. Obviously, then you're responsible for maintaining it. They have a couple other comments here, like, hey, are the Baros daemons compatible with Bacula daemons? It looks like at one point that was true. They've no longer tested it in recent times. And it looked like it also at one point you could migrate from Bacula to Baros. I don't know if you're starting today how true that is or how well that would work. I imagine that there would be other solutions you could look into. They also talk about, hey, are there any new features here? This is also pretty old, but it sounds like when it was launched, yes, like one of their key focuses was taking patches that had been rejected from Bacula and adding them to this project. So it does sound like there's some differences in development. I don't have enough personal experience to say, were those patches good or bad? There can be good patches that don't make sense in a project for a variety of reasons. I don't necessarily have that much history to be able to say. I did do some cursory searching around. There are some people on the internet with opinions. Hey, who knew? So one place you can go check out is over on the Linux admin subreddit. They kind of have some discussion here about, hey, this was from about 2 months ago, talking about, can anyone point me in a direction where I could understand pros, cons of Bacula versus Baros or provide personal experience? So there's some people here talking about backup PCs, some other backup solutions that you might like. Be interesting to see what people think of this thread. And then there's a couple people here talking about, some of the features that they like for Baros versus Bacula. One of the ones that stood out to me here was one of the selling points for Baros is the web interface. I know Bacula has its own web interface, but it isn't the same. As far as I know, you can't really do anything with Bacula web. On the other hand, the Baros web UI, you can run backups and restores. Another big win, in my opinion, was the better official documentation Baros had. This may not be an issue if you know what you're doing, but if you're starting from scratch, this is a huge advantage. I don't know how current these things are, but that might be a place where you can go see people who've tried both systems, go figure out, hey, which one is for me. So I'll throw these in the show notes as well, and so people can take a look and make up their minds. I'd love to hear from some of our audience. Maybe people have experience with both these systems or have made a choice and have their rationale. So now, Dad, I'm sure you've been waiting in the wings. Do you have any thoughts?
I don't use Baros.
But I have heard that you do use something called Bacula?
Yeah, I use Bacula. And I tend not to help the people that come onto the Bacula mailing lists or onto the Bacula IRC channels asking for help with Baros either.
Well, I mean, that seems fair. They could have their own mailing list.
Yes. They do.
Yeah,
they do.
Right. There you go.
But they ask us for help. I don't know why. They ask us for help.
I suppose sometimes when you want help, you're willing to ask just about anyone who you think might listen.
Now, there was bad blood between the two projects when they forked.
Yeah.
Because basically it was sort of done not nicely, and names were removed from copyright files and stuff like that. I think that all got sorted out eventually, but a lot of the developers on Bacula were not happy about the Baros fork. They're fine with the Bacula project, but good luck to them. And stuff that they're doing, Bacula can use as well, and stuff is migrating between both projects, I believe.
Nice. See that? So that's good. So they can both be healthy. They can both be working on these things. Maybe hopefully even trading patches when appropriate. Awesome. Okay.
Yep.
That's great. Well, I'll be curious to see.
I'm biased.
Right, but you're admitting that.
Yes.
Yeah, so I might look into it a little bit more, but definitely, audience, I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. If anyone has experience with both, if anyone has any more, anything else they'd like to add to this discussion. It sounds like we're in a good position where both projects are doing well and both do work properly. And hey, it's better to have more backup solutions than less, I think.
Yes, I agree.
Awesome. Okay, well, with that, then let's head on over to the next mailbag item. We've got a question about a low-end backup solution.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they write, I would like to thank you for continuing TechSNAP. Hey, we're happy to do that. While I was a little worried after your first and second episodes, you totally rock now, and TechSNAP is exactly what I expect from a tech show. Oh, well, thank you. That makes us very happy, I'm sure.
Thank you.
We're very happy that you guys are joining us, and we're having a lot of fun. It continues. I have a little file server based on this machine. Let's see. Looks like there's a
and it's
picture
pretty.
Here. Hey.
It is pretty. Look at this.
Yeah. Got some power supplies, some of those Raspberry Pis in there.
He has the little rack.
Yeah.
He's got 2 in there. I wonder what he's got 2 for. Because do you know what that little box in the corner with the Ethernet cable going into it? That looks exactly like this thing up in the corner of the rack here.
Oh, there we go. Switched it to you.
This thing here.
Oh, it does look like that. Yeah.
Looks like that. That is a Atlas Ripe probe from, as in ripe.net. There's a lot of DNS queries.
Oh, right. I remember us talking about that very briefly.
So in one photograph here, it looks rectangular. Mine is definitely a square one, but I think they're both TP-Link boxes. I'm not sure. Yep, mine's a TP-Link as well.
Yeah, this one's TP-Link.
His box looks rectangular, and it looks like it has two oh, it almost looks like a switch.
Yeah, maybe
looks like
it
it has 4 nicks on it.
Interesting. Okay. So he's got a little switch in the box. There's some more stuff. All right, back to the question.
So I've got one of those passport CD drives here. That's his 1 terabyte drive.
All right, let's see. So he's got this little file server. It's just a Raspberry Pi with a terabyte spinning disk. There's what you were just talking about. I'm using Samba, and it's working great, delivering music and movies to all my computers and a phone. I am a little worried about that disk, and my backups are bad right now because I'm just copying everything to another disk every month. Data's not changing that much, but sometimes I'm adding new music or fixing tags of MP3s. Is there a simple backup solution that can do incremental, or at least could give me a nice list of files changed from last full backup? Is Bacula an overkill for a task like this? I'm close to just writing my own bash scripts, but the lazy part of me wanted to ask you guys. Thanks, Lucas. Thank you very much for writing to us, Lucas. That's a great question. Thank you also. It's always fun when people send in pictures, other things. We're going to get like a better idea of just what's happening. Gives us a little, you could get windows into our lives, and we get windows into your lives.
It's pretty cool.
What do you think, Dan?
Is two little Raspberry Pis here. Well, first, he's been listening. He was worried about our first and second episodes. So was I. I was very nervous.
Yes. It should also be noted that we did that in one day. So it was really like the first episode.
First and second episodes were in the same day. The first episode was at lunchtime. The second episode was about this time of day.
That was a hell of a day.
Yes, it was. I'd forgotten that they were both in the same day. So now he's just copying stuff over manually. I think that's what he's saying in the third paragraph there, just because I'm copying everything over. So it sounds like he's doing it manually. Bacula overkill, I would say so. Your own bash scripts. No, don't write your own bash scripts. Run shell scripts. bin/sh, but maybe that is bash on his box.
Yeah, right, probably.
I would use rsync. What do you think? Rsync from one drive to the other.
Yeah, I think ArtSync would work reasonably well. I've seen some other ones that I've tried a little bit in the past. Like one of them is, well, I think originally it was Attic, and then a fork of it appeared called Borg.
Yep.
So I think there's a couple options like that, Borg, and maybe even, we were talking about duplicity earlier. That might be something, because it sounds like for this case, you don't need, like a lot of where the power of Bacula seemed to come from, it had these, different daemons, almost like a service-oriented architecture where you could kind of reposition things. It made it very flexible, but maybe also, requires a little bit more setup than you want. Whereas here, it seems like there's enough kind of tools, rsync or rsnapshot, rdiff backup.
Yeah, and his backup is just one copy as well.
Right.
If he's copying just to one other drive, it's only one. It's only one copy. It's not like you've got multiple.
Yeah, so I think here, so it just depends on, like how much do you want like a series, of linked snapshots that let you assemble back the data like true incremental style, or do you just want something, like rsync where you could, you just transfer it and then you have incremental just on the sending part? How much do you want that? Is just one set of your data enough? But I would say look into Duplicity, look into Borg, our snapshot, a couple other ones. There's like a lot of them that are just kind of like thin wrappers around rsync or SSH or other things where you can get some of those features, but you don't have to set up a whole bunch of other servers or run a bunch of daemons places.
Yeah, so something very simple, not very complex. That's what he's asking for, but rsync may be what you want, but then you still only just got one copy of everything you want. What was the thing that used to do multiple rsync net? Was that the one that used to do symlinks and hard links and stuff in a directory just to keep everything?
Oh yeah, that does sound familiar.
Or rsync. I remember a tool like that. One thing I note about his setup. Have you noted? Oh, okay, I see. It's European. I was going to say I really like his his power strip because everything is angled.
Yeah, that is nice. I have seen a couple you can buy for the U.S. market that have like have those, but where they rotate. So
yeah, and it's definitely European. If you look at the extension cord, the plug on the end of the extension cord is a 2-pin plug.
Oh yeah, look at that. So it is. Nice. Okay, yeah, and we can throw some of those things. We talked about Duplicity, Borg, RDiff backup, our snapshot as options. And hey, this is another aspect of the feedback segment where we get to chime in. And now it's your turn, audience. You can write back in. Let us know if you have a better answer. If you have some of these more minimalist backup tools that you like, that you use every day, we'd love to hear from you.
I want to know what the 2 and the 3 on the Ethernet ports mean.
Oh yeah, see now there's.
Did he have a first one?
That's a very good question. Okay, let's see. Looks like we've got one final feedback item for the day, unless you had something else to add.
No, this is a very cool box. Thank you for the photographs. It is very cool. I'm
having a lot of fun looking through the photographs, checking it out. It's awesome to get to see this, just an example of the stuff you're working on. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes,
thank you for
very
sending
much.
those in.
Alrighty, on to our final feedback item today from Andrew. He has a question about mixing hard drive batches in a RAID setup. A listener asked about mitigating data loss by drive failures, RAID Z1 versus RAID Z2. I use mirrors in my server, and I try to mitigate issues of failing drives by mixing the drive batches. Each time I add a new mirror pair to the pool, I mix the manufacturing batch and ages around. The hope is if 2 drives will fail, they're most likely to be related, same age or batch. Then he adds, the best laid plans never survive contact with Murphy's Law. Andrew, username Heath3827, listener since episode 86. Hey, that's awesome, Andrew. We're sure glad you stuck around, that you're continuing to join us here for the TechSNAP program. What do you think about this, Dan? Is this something you consider in your builds?
Well, first I want to point out that he's been listening since November 29th, 2012.
Awesome.
Which is 1,615 days, or roughly 237 episodes.
That's super cool. Yeah, it is.
That's a lot. So, I've heard this before. I've heard this a lot. You see it mentioned time and time again on various channels, but I've never done it. I need 5 drives, so I buy 5 drives and I put them all in. I've never. If they're all in the same batch, they're all in the same batch. I've never made an effort to do this. I guess you could buy a drive from one reseller and another drive from another reseller and hope that they don't match up. But I don't usually do mirror pairs. I usually do RAID Z 2s or 3s. So I don't fall into the same use cases he does. But I asked in the channel, Alan basically says he buys his boxes from iXsystems, who do a burn-in of 3 days, so the duds disappear by then. So, yeah, if you do your burn-in, I guess it's less of a problem. But just for home use and doing stuff like that, you've got the time and you can do that. But I don't see anything wrong with it.
Right.
But
I did see some people noting that you are doing that. You want to make sure, and you probably already are, but like make sure that you get drive, especially if it depends on what the purpose of the system. If it's just like a occasional access system, then that probably matters less. But if you're having something that needs like, you have latency or throughput requirements, then you want to make sure that you get drives with similar performance characteristics so that you don't have, like weird spikes where you're accessing data on one disk or things like that.
Alan pointed out that I said RAID Z2, not RAID Z2.
You've been corrupted, my friend.
Damn. But I still say, what do you call the glass in front of you when you're driving? In the car?
Windscreen? Yeah. Something like that?
Which one do you say?
I would say windshield.
I say windscreen all the time.
Okay, interesting. I guess I've heard it like I said it there, but I don't think I'd ever say it in day-to-day conversation.
That's probably the one word that I've retained from living in different places. Very few of the other ones. Like every once in a while, I'll come up with some sort of a phrase. People are like, what the hell was that? What did you just say?
Yes. It's always weird. Then you have to like try to explain it, and you're like, I didn't make up the phrase. This is just something we all say, except for you.
Now, as pointed out by JD, you have to be careful with mix and match. In terms of even a tiny difference in drive sizes could cause problems. But that's not what he's talking about. He's not talking about drives from different manufacturers. He's talking about drives purchased from different locations, different times, the same model. But even then, sometimes they do vary. But the way I get around that when using ZFS is I create a partition on the drive and leave maybe a few meg at the end unused on every drive that I use. So they're not all exactly maxed out. And that gives me that little bit of leeway so that even if there's, a meg difference between two drives, which is a huge difference. If you have a 5 terabyte drive, them varying in size by a meg should be a lot. But even at a 5 terabyte size, missing a gigabyte, you're not going to miss that gig.
Right, yeah.
So you could even leave a gig spare, and they're not going to differ by a gig. So yeah, that's the way I avoid the drives in and out. JD says they might be plus or minus a sector.
Yeah, okay.
But not a few meg.
Right. I would also say that this might be a concern. Like, it seems like this should only be a concern if this is your sole backup, or if you have stringent availability requirements.
I'm sure the big manufacturers are not doing this.
Yeah. Right. No, probably not. And so this seems like, if it's something that you can easily do and you feel comfortable doing it, sure, do it. I wouldn't for my home system if I had backups of the data that I cared about. I probably wouldn't go to the trouble personally, but hey, I think go for it. Anything you'd like to add there, Mr. Dan?
Generally, when you're looking for hard drives, you can find bad opinions about any one brand or model. So just pick the ones that you think are going to go well and use them. That's what I do. Because if you only look for the bad reviews of drives, you're going to find them because everyone has drive failures. Let's just hope it's not you.
Right, but it's a lot harder to find like statistically meaningful samples of drive failures.
Yep. Even Backblaze sometimes is questionable. Those are huge numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I think then that will wrap up the feedback segment, and that brings us to our final sponsor of the day. That's our friends over at Ting. Go on over to techsnap.ting.com. There you'll find a company that's on a mission to make mobile make sense. Yeah, you might not even know that mobile didn't make sense. It doesn't. It makes no sense. It's crazy. There's contracts, there's early termination fees, there's these like weird plans that you have to sign up for in advance and try to somehow predict your exact use case, or you'll just know that you're underutilizing or pay horrible overage charges with Ting. No, my friends. There's no overage charges, there's no early termination fees, and there's no contracts. It just starts at $6 a month. Yeah, that's right. One line, $6 a month. Then you just pay for what you use, your minutes, your messages, or your megabytes. Combine them all together. Go on over to the rates page. There you'll see just what I'm talking about. They got this awesome rates table. Kind of click like, what do you need? You got a family of 3. Hey, you like to talk? But who sends text messages? It's 2017. Add some data in there, and they just show you right there, monthly total. That's less than $20 a line. That's impossible to beat pretty much anywhere else. How are you going to do that? And it comes with all the extras you come to expect, right? There's no extra fee for tethering. There's no lower magic tethering allowance balance. No, Ting understands you're an adult. If you want to tether, you want to use data, go for it. That's your data. You pay for it. You pay for just what you use. By going to techsnap.ting.com, that'll get you a $25 service credit. So you'll see right there, even with your family of 3 with a pretty significant usage, that pays for almost half your first month bill. So there's really, at $6 a month with the service credit, there's really no reason not to go to techsnap.ting.com today. Go check it out. Get started playing with it. It's a perfect device. They have both GSM and CDMA. For $6 a month, it's really easy to have a backup phone that you just leave in the truck, or like a real cheapo phone that you just want to bring when you go hiking or other places, but you don't want to break your main phone. Or one of my most favorite use cases is you want to set it up to like an LTE modem or a hotspot device, keep it in your house, have like a remote access in case your main internet provider goes down. Super useful for that. And since if you're not using any data, you just pay for what you use. It's $6 a month. I mean, plus taxes and fees. They can't do anything about that. They would if they could. I'm sure they're very good people over there, but they can't. So that's just going to happen. Plus, you can bring your own device. If you don't have a device, go on over to their shop. They've got a ton of awesome phones. You can buy their SIM cards from just $9. And if you wait and you watch, sometimes they have SIM card sales. Just go buy a bunch. It's totally worth it. You can see they've got a lot of great phones here. They can clearly tell that people are using them for things. Look at this Alcatel One Touch Fling, $20. Get it right there. Start using Ting. It's awesome. So if you're interested, and you should be, go on over to techsnap.ting.com. Get started with the mobile service provider that makes mobile make sense. They're in there for you, right? They're not working on new lines. Their value add is customer service. They've got a great app. They've got first-rate real humans you can call. Or just go over to techsnap.ting.com. With that wraps up today's feedback segment. You can head over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. There you will find the form where you can submit feedback to us. You can also head on over to the subreddit at techsnap.reddit.com, or you can find both of us on Twitter. And that brings us to the final segment of today's show. That's right. It's everyone's favorite. It's the Roundup, the segment of the show where we just didn't have enough time to cover these stories in the detail that we'd like to on the TechSNAP program, but nevertheless, we're interested in them. We think you'll be interested in them. So let's get started. First up, why use Postgres? Updated for the last 5 years. So this is an interesting one. I mean, it obviously seems right up your alley, Mr. Dan. It looks like they've compiled kind of a long, like an updated history of the things that why Postgres has been useful to Mr. Craig Kernstein over the years. What did you think of this? Is it kind of jive with the reasons you use it, or were there items here that kind of surprised you?
No, most of the stuff I've heard of before, but this is the stuff that's come in particular in the past 5 years since he wrote his previous blog post that got some good attention way back when. Now, the stuff that's come out recently that will appeal to a lot of people is JSON support. And that's very useful for people who like NoSQL but don't want to use NoSQL. And
right, they've heard bad things about Mongo and they ran away screaming.
And foreign data wrappers. Basically, you can map an external data system to tables directly in Postgres. So you can write some sort of, you can actually write the queries that will go out and query data that is external to Postgres. But your SQL queries don't know any different. They don't know that you're actually going outside of Postgres. So you can, the options there are endless. You can query into another database server, basically, and just write the foreign data wrappers that you need to do that. It's just so cool.
I've never actually used that. That sounds pretty useful, though.
Yeah, it can be a file. It can be, it could go out on the internet and check the status of something somewhere else. You can query anything you want. If you can write the code, you can do it. But yeah, at the risk of pissing off all the people that love MySQL, this has a lot of good information in it.
Excellent. Yeah. So you guys should check that out and maybe give us some feedback about the things that you agreed with, disagreed with, or hey, maybe there's some reasons to use Postgres that weren't mentioned in this guide. I'd like to hear about those too. So this next one, it's a little self-referential. I guess maybe there should be like a caveat there, but I thought this was interesting. It's forcing password gropers through a smaller hole with OpenBSD's PF queues. So this is something we don't talk about OpenBSD very often on this show, not for any particular reason. It just doesn't come up that much. But it's a fascinating distribution, and obviously they're the people that created PF, which we do talk about quite a bit. So tell us more.
And when I grabbed this one, I did not notice that he was quoting. He's quoting one of my tweets.
Actually, I didn't notice that either when I first saw the story. So,
but I know Peter. I've known him for a number of years. He's been running a PF tutorial at BSDCan for many years, and every year there's lots of people in there learning more about PF. And if you don't know what PF is, it's a packet filter native to OpenBSD, and it has really rich features. And the feature in particular that he wants to take advantage of here is a bandwidth feature where you can put people into a queue. So I first became familiar with PF's ability to queue stuff or to trap spammers was with gray listing. Basically, if you've never talked to this server before, if this IP address has never talked to this mail server before, it diverts you to another queue, which talks very slowly, like 1 character a second. And a lot of spam tools will not wait that long. They will say, oh, I don't have a connection, and go away and try another delivery. Whereas proper SMTP daemons will actually wait for this stuff to come in. And if you wait long enough, you get whitelisted and you try again and you come in straight. So that's how OpenBSD does the gray listing. And I like it. And I wanted something that would stop these people that pound and pound and pound on fresh ports, downloading all this crap that they don't really need and which I asked them not to download with robots.txt. And I want to divert these guys over into something very slow. I don't want to block them because then they'll realize and say, oh, I should use another IP address. Get them really slow, very slow loading, so it doesn't overload my server. Yeah, so that's where this came about, and I'm thinking of using the same approach so that if fail to ban detects that someone is downloading like 500K in the past 1.5 seconds, I'll say, oh no, that's too fast. Just slow down and take your time.
Ooh, I like the idea of combining it with fail to ban there. That seems like a great idea.
Yep. And most very good spiders take their time. They pace it. They have many different spiders fetching, but it's all evenly spaced out. It's not like you're going to get, oh, give me these 1,000 URLs right now, please, in the next 3 seconds. That's not playing well with others.
Right. Potentially malicious behavior.
Yes. Some people say, oh, no, your server should be able to handle that. Not if the spike that you look at on the graph, the traffic's like this, and you're like that. Sorry.
Right. And I mean, there's like an incentive to, it's like, well, okay, maybe it should, but is that just for you? How much money do you want me to, resources are finite, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And if you're trying to go to my server, then you value the things I'm trying to serve to you. So please kind of just play nicely. If not, I will make you.
I will make you play nice.
That syntax looks really nice. I mean, I've always enjoyed PF syntax. It's usually pretty easy to grok. That looked pretty easy. I mean, I haven't used PF on the command line for probably a couple of years, but even then it was like, okay, yeah, I think I could pick this up in, not too long. So worth a shot. Let us know, audience members, if you guys use this or if you have any other interesting traffic tips like that. I think that's a common problem people run into.
Yeah, I'll be looking at this after BSDCan because I really don't have the time now. Right. But yeah, Peter's good.
When is BSDCan? I guess I could answer that myself, couldn't I?
I know when PGCon is. BSDCan is June 7th to 10th of June.
Nice.
June 7th to 12th of June in Ottawa. Alan will be there. I'll be there.
Sounds like a thing not to miss, everyone.
Don't miss it.
So speaking of things that we won't miss, this brings us to our final roundup item of the day. And hey, today's roundup's actually been surprisingly positive, and let's end on another positive note. The NSA has halted their collection of Americans' emails about foreign targets.
Your first question should be, why were they gathering them in the first place? Well, they thought they could because they were emailing someone else. But that's not very good. It's not very nice. Stop gathering our emails. You don't need them.
Right. And so some people, especially like Senator Ron Wyden or others, really felt that this kind of amounted to a runaround around the Fourth Amendment, where it's like, well, you really shouldn't be doing this. But, there was enough of a purview that it was claimed that, well, yes, it basically amounted that they were searching for emails and texts sent by Americans to foreign individuals and then grokking, trying to search through those to find certain words that were suspicious. They are no longer doing that. It does feel, it's nice, right? Like it's a little bit more reasonable now to think, I'm an American, you're not supposed to be spying on me in this way. Please just stop. Sure, if you want to go collect surveillance against 2 foreign nationals, that's part of your charter and job. I'm not saying that, I don't, whether I want that or not, okay, but it really didn't feel right. I always felt that, about the way they were doing this. So this can bring it into a line, hopefully we can feel a little bit better about the things that our government is doing to not only protect us, and that's important. We need national security. We need, we need to stop the threats that are real in this world, but not at the cost of privacy and, our central liberties.
I'd like to know if they've gotten rid of the data they collected.
Right. That's also a very good question. They have those crazy warehouses. They have so much data. Data
everywhere.
It was not mentioned here. Oh, IRC room WW. Why sniff email when they can just work with Intel? That really brings it full circle. I imagine we will see that, for cases like this, there are other avenues that they can explore. All right. Well, I guess that's the end of the roundup today. Kind of a short roundup, but heavy hitting. Anything else you'd like to send people to, direct them to, or just comment on today?
No. Check your backups. Make sure you get your keys.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great one. I think you should all definitely do that. Don't run into the mistake that your friend did. That's just terrible.
Test the restore.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, well, with that wraps up episode 317 of this here TechSNAP program. If you liked it, head on over to jupiterbroadcasting.com. There you can find our archives, the previous generation's archives, and a whole bunch of other awesome shows. Go check out Ask Noah. It's brand new. You can get in on the early days, watch its evolution. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Coming up next week, Linux Fest Northwest up in Bellingham, Washington. It's next Friday and Saturday. If you watch this by then, come check it out. A bunch of the JB crew will be there. It's going to be a ton of fun, and they'll be broadcasting the final Linux action show live from the event. Go check that out. It will surely be the end of an era, a piece of history, and something not to miss. If you'd like to hear more from us or give us your feedback, go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact or techsnap.reddit.com, or I am at Wes Payne on Twitter. He is at techsnap_Dan. I think that wraps it up today. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.